Welcome to the ROI for Emotional Intelligence. I'm David Cory with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and today we are going to look at some of the reasons that companies are interested in implementing emotional intelligence programming in their organizations. And as I have said in the past, it's one thing to know about the ROI, and sometimes you might have to talk about the ROI, but many companies already know this. And so that's their motivation for reaching out, for wanting to know more about emotional intelligence and how it can help their managers to be leaders and how it can help their employees to communicate more clearly, build more healthy relationships, build better relationships with their customers, how to manage themselves in ways that put their company in the best possible light. These are some of the benefits of emotional intelligence training. So let's jump right in and talk about some of the issues that organizations face. I just want to see if you can relate to anything on this list. So take a look and type into the chat box, which of the following have you experienced in your workplace over the course of your career? Have you ever seen poor leadership? My guess is that's a yes for that one. And have you ever experienced unmanaged conflict? And of course, you probably have. Why do people not manage conflict? Typically, fear. They don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations. They don't want to address the elephant in the room. They'd rather walk around it, and many reasons. But generally, it's a lack of skills. How do I handle this conflict in a way that's constructive, that's productive, that is helpful? Certainly, you've experienced misunderstanding in the workplace, and we're actually going to talk about what that costs companies, that misunderstanding. And typically, when a company calls us, and this happens from time to time, it's not the bulk of our business, but a company will call us and say, we've got a people problem. And typically, it's the right people not talking to the right people about the right things. They're not having these conversations. Again, like the unmanaged conflict, they are wary of, they're cautious of those conversations, which can be uncomfortable, which we sometimes avoid. We sometimes choose to tolerate certain behaviors rather than address them. And as we say in our organization, leadership is about taking the lead. It's about stepping up to the plate. It's about doing what's necessary, even though it might be uncomfortable or awkward, or you're taking a risk when entering into those conversations. So you've probably all seen ego getting in the way, and certainly we have to understand that it's not about us at some point, and we have to understand that it's about the organization. It's about the helping the organization to achieve its goals. Okay, so let's take a look in the chat box, see some of the things that you've said. Okay, so all of them, all of the above, all of the above. Yeah, absolutely. Poor leadership and unmanaged conflict for sure. And ego is a tough one. Absolutely, it is. And when we've got people who have a more healthy way of viewing themselves as one person with a responsibility to contribute to the greater good, then we can help people to become more aware of how ego gets in the way when we think it's all about us, and how we can move ego out of the way to create a more collaborative, participative work environment. Favoritism, we've all experienced that, lack of fairness, and it just feels horrible. I had a boss who was so fair that he would never give me special consideration, and it was so annoying. I felt like I deserved special consideration, but he would not give it to me. He was so fair, and it can be annoying at times, but it's the best way to go, obviously. Lack of psychological safety. We're hearing that word more and more as we progress into the 21st century. This idea of that managers can create a psychological danger, if you will, and shut people down, cause people to not want to contribute, cause people to not want to share, not want to give of their ideas. And then, of course, many organizations track employee engagement, and we see, according to Gallup and other big survey companies, we see on the whole frighteningly low employee engagement scores. And it's like, how is this possible? How do people disengage from their work? So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. And then retention issues. Again, we're gonna dive a bit deeper into retention issues, and look at what it costs companies to once again determine that ROI. Projects past due and over budget. I clearly remember being in a forestry company in BC at some point. This was many years ago now. And on the desk of the training and development manager was a big, thick binder. And on the front of the binder, it said the Microsoft IT team training manual. And I opened up the binder, and the very first slide after the title slide, they had the PowerPoint slides all printed out. The second slide was IT project teams fail for reasons other than technical. And of course, we know that this is about getting people working effectively together and creating effective teamwork. When really that wasn't the reason that people got into that industry sector in the first place. They got into that industry sector for the technology, for the technical skills, for the analytical way of looking at things, for what they could contribute by way of IT expertise, not necessarily their desire and their ability and their skill at working together as a team. And so this is interesting. All right, thank you for participating in that mini survey. Let's go on. I thought it would be really interesting to discuss, what do ineffective leaders cost businesses? And you may have seen some behaviors and some actions, and we're going to do this using the chat box as well. What I want you to do is type in some of those behaviors that we'll talk about. If you can think of the cost to business, and enter that as well. But if you can think about some of those behaviors, what do ineffective leaders do? What do they say to people? How do they act or behave around others? Then maybe we'll figure out the cost to business together. Or unless you have a suggestion there, please feel free to enter that as well. Yes, yes, Sarah. Ego may possibly be caused by fear. Absolutely, people get protective and feel insecure when threatened. Abrasive behaviors. Yes, abrasive behaviors. This is something that is so interesting, and we also work in industry sectors where there's very little they can do about abrasive behaviors. The post-secondary environment is one of those environments that I'm thinking about, where it's very difficult to sanction someone for behaving abrasively to others, and everybody knows there's a problem. But there's very little that can be done about it. And abrasive behaviors, again, cause people to feel that psychological danger that I spoke about earlier. And what it does is it shuts people down. They don't feel like speaking up. They certainly don't admit mistakes. They might, in fact, start blaming others so that they're not the recipient of the abrasive behavior. Micromanagement, control, absolutely, Andrea. Micromanagement apparently is one of the biggest mistakes globally that particularly new managers can make, but it doesn't have to be new managers. Even veteran managers make this mistake on occasion. And micromanagement doesn't feel good, does it? It's like someone hanging over your shoulder, someone checking your work on a constant basis. And also with micromanagers, they often have an idea of how the work should be done. So, of course, you don't have any autonomy. They don't. It feels like they don't trust you. It probably feels like they don't trust you because they don't trust you. Why otherwise would they be constantly checking? And this is a frequent topic of coaching with many of the managers that we work with, is how to trust employees, how to not be the micromanager. And at first, they think that's what managers do, is micromanage. But then, of course, what they need to be aware of is the impact. The intention is that the work gets done well. And as you all know, there's a difference between intention and impact. The impact is that it causes people to feel not trusted and of course constantly scrutinized and supervised to where you feel like there's no creativity or no room to do things your way, and it really doesn't feel good. Thanks, Paul. It doesn't don't listen to different perspectives or encourage learning from mistakes. Absolutely. In fact, in some companies, they actually have a kind of a company culture of pretending that mistakes are not made, and as if perfection is some sort of reasonable goal for us human beings, which of course you all know that that's not true. That perfection is not a reasonable goal for us human beings. And so one of the ways that we encourage managers to create psychological safety is to admit mistakes, and not blame people, but talk about the mistake as something that's happened, and so that everybody can learn from them, of course. Thanks, Randa. Not value ideas from others because they believe they're the most knowledgeable in the room. Absolutely. Yes, we see this, and sometimes that's connected to ego, people needing to feel smart or important or knowledgeable or expert. Absolutely. And when people call themselves a guru, it's like, okay, so that's or the other one that I love is people call themselves a thought leader. Really, you're leading the thought on this? It sounds a little bit egocentric, and perhaps that's someone who needs to feel like they are the most knowledgeable in the room. Avoiding giving constructive feedback. Absolutely, Gwendolyn. Avoiding giving constructive feedback. And as I frequently say in our workshops, we are not a feedback culture. We are not used to giving and receiving feedback on a continual basis. As a result, we sometimes avoid giving feedback. In the absence of any feedback, what do? We continue on our track. Even though we may be off track, we just continue on. And of course, what we're looking for and wanting is to know that we're on the right track. And if we're off track, to know that we're off track, to be given an opportunity to course correct. So of course, that is important. So again, the cost to business, abrasive leaders shut things down. So again, there's little communication, there's psychological danger, there's no creativity or innovation, and this idea of micromanagement, again, feeling like someone's always watching you over your shoulder. It's demotivating and a bit humiliating at the same time, demoralizing. And when people don't listen to different perspectives or encourage learning from mistakes, again, this idea that perfection is the goal, and again, it feels a bit dangerous to, again, admit mistakes or speak up, etc. And not valuing ideas from others. it's not very motivating or inspiring for others. They're not going to keep giving you their good ideas, and it shuts them down. We're going to look at the dollar values associated to some of these things momentarily, but for now, these are costs to businesses. Avoiding giving constructive feedback. Again, you've got people who are off track who don't know it. You've got people who are on track but wondering if they are or not. And again, it harms. It harms motivation. Do not provide clarity and direction. Yeah, we just don't know whether we're going in the right direction or not. Um, uh, okay, so you specialize in coaching abrasive leaders. That's fantastic. It certainly is a business niche because there are a lot of them out there. Um, don't give enough feedback for learning. Absolutely similar to giving feedback and direction, not inclusive. Yes, this is increasingly an issue. Is organizations that or particular managers who don't understand inclusion and what that means and how to encourage diversity of perspectives and certainly don't understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we see these absolutely tragic and frightening laws being created by certain states and certain countries where they absolutely are demonstrating their ignorance as to what inclusion is all about, and of course outlawing things like offering courses on diversity, equity, and inclusion is absolutely anachronistic. It's like turning the clock back several decades. Don't empower yeah, managers who don't understand empowerment and think that it's about the manager having all the power. Don't not giving others opportunities to grow. Absolutely, actually shutting down or limiting the organization's opportunity to become a learning organization. Focusing on results first, people second, absolutely. And as we frequently say, that managers all over the globe have a responsibility to balance getting results with the impact on people, and then that balance is going to be different for different industry sectors. But when you focus on results first, then people often suffer as a result. And yes, we see some of those organizations thriving, and we see people making a lot of money, but it's not sustainable. What we know is that money is never the number one reason that people are attracted to employment, and so it has to be sustainable. Excuse me, over time. All right. So thank you so much for participating in that little exercise. Let's look at a bit of the research now. What does it say? What does it tell us about things like employee satisfaction and employee retention? As you know, some of the issues that people concerned with organizational effectiveness have to be concerned with are, one, creating an attractive workplace. How are we going to attract top talent to our organization? How are we going to engage them once we've got them? And then how are we going to keep them over the long term? And so this is a little bit about the retention issues. So what we know is that happy staff make for happy customers, engaged employees do the best work, happy customers make for repeat business makes for a healthy ROI. But if you can't keep those happy staff, then you've got an issue. You are continually investing in the attraction, recruitment, screening, onboarding, training process to get people. As you know, with a new employee, there's a lag between when you hire them and a time when you see the return on investment for that employee, and that is affected. I just found this interesting. uh, percentage from the Saratoga Institute, which is PricewaterhouseCoopers research arm, found between 9% and 32% of losses are connected to poor leadership. And you all know the old saying, employees don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. And so we need to make sure that managers have the skills and understand these issues implicitly. And it seems simple, and it seems like common sense to many of us. However, the problem is it's not common practice. It may be common sense. In fact, much of what we're going to be talking about today, you could say there's a common sense to it, but it's not common practice. And I guess that's what we need to address. That's what those of us who are concerned with organizational development and organizational effectiveness, that's what we do, is we are concerned with those issues. And again, sometimes we have to remind companies of these issues so that they see that that this training that they're offering, this program that they're implementing, it's not just a nice thing to do, or a good thing to do, or the right thing to do. There are absolutely bottom line business effects and impacts that can be had. And again, that's what this webinar is all about, is helping you to know what those are, bring those to awareness so that you can remind your customers, your clients, and even those of you who are internal to organizations, remind those organizations internally what we're addressing here and why. Aubrey Daniels was I don't know if he still is, maybe, just haven't seen any books from him recently, but the book that I do have from him, which goes back to either the late 80s or early 90s, talked about this interesting study that he did, where he was interested in looking at the percentage of effort that employees put into their work. Now, this is a kind of a weird thing to think about. Have you ever thought about the percentage of effort that employees put in below which they would get terminated? What would you imagine that percentage to be? And again, apparently Aubrey Daniels went in with a team of researchers into several different industry sectors, and they, through exit interviews and performance reviews and looking at all of this qualitative data, they came up with a guesstimate, a quantitative guesstimate for a minimum level of effort that employees could put in, below which they would lose their jobs. What would be your guess? Just type it into the chat box. Yeah, love that. Common sense, but not common practice. Yeah, it's something that we had to say frequently when people would look at us after a training and say, "This is just common sense." Well, yeah, it kind of is, but it's not common practice, and that's why we have to offer the training. And people don't have the skills necessarily. We've got 60. Here are some of the guesses: 60%, 70%, 40%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 75%, 60%. If you said 30, you were right. So here we go. Here's our 30% minimum required effort to keep a job. Fall below it and you're fired, but stay at it. Your manager is probably not happy with you, but in any case, you get to, because you are fulfilling the job description and you're doing. I remember, well, when we were kids, and you'd walk into school and there'd be paper all over the floor. The janitor didn't clean up the night before, and they called it work to rule. So it was some sort of job action by the union, and so they weren't causing such a fuss that they were losing their jobs, but they were nobody was happy with them. So that's minimum required effort. Now, what do you think the maximum level of effort that top performers can put in day out over time? What do you think that level is? Interested in your guesses there. I think I've worked with peers who read the study. Yeah, absolutely, Andrea. I think we all have. Okay, so we've got a guess of 80, 75. Any other guesses that you want to hazard? We've got a guess of 50, 90. Every once in a while, someone will guess 110%. And yes, we've all heard the 110%. And I like to suggest that those people perhaps don't understand math, but that's not beside the point. We've all heard the 110%, but that's not sustainable. So it actually is, for those of you who said 80, and some of you did, 80% for top performers. Again, this is sustainable over time, day in, day out. They're highly motivated. They found their meaning and their sense of purpose, and they probably love their jobs, but they give at that level of, and now this is all guesstimates and of course very difficult to measure. It's not like we can hold up a meter to someone and it gives us a reading as to their percentage of effort on a given day. Now the researchers came up with a very interesting name for this effort that we put in at our discretion. What do you think they called it? Any guesses? This level, this effort that we put in at our discretion. Not seeing any guesses. And that's typical because, people think it's some sort of technical term, but it's actually just discretionary effort. And so discretionary effort is interesting to think about for a moment, because discretionary effort is that effort that we give, that we have complete control over. Nobody can come up to us and say to us, you're going to give me 80% of your effort today. It's not going to happen. It happens for many other reasons, for many other factors, some of which I've mentioned. Someone's found their passion. Someone's found the role that really has meaning and a sense of purpose for them, and so they go all out in it. And those are your 80 percenters every day. Why not more? Probably because it would lead to fatigue and is unsustainable. However, the single biggest factor that Aubrey Daniels and his team found in this study was, and you can probably guess what that is because we kind of have talked about it already, but it's your direct supervisor. So if we can help direct supervisors to understand that they impact employees. Now, a discretionary effort is purely emotional. This has very little to do with people having the right technical training or having the right equipment, having the right technology, having the right coworkers is a factor, but the single biggest is their manager. So if we can help managers to understand that they impact employees emotionally, and that emotions are connected to discretionary effort, and discretionary effort is connected to productivity, is connected to the bottom line in terms of outcomes and results, then we can be ahead of the curve with respect to helping managers to understand some of these issues. Now, why do we need to train managers? Because as you all know, again, the number one reason globally that managers get their jobs, that is promoted from a position where they are a high-performing individual contributor to becoming management, the single biggest reason is not how they treat people. That doesn't even seem to be a criterion that is looked at for many organizations. It's credentials, it's technical skills, it's background and experience, but what's often not added to the list is someone's ability with other people. How do they treat people? How do they inspire? How do they motivate? Do they demonstrate their passion for their work? These kinds of considerations are often not on the list. So what we're talking about is offering that kind of training to organizations. So I hope you get the idea. I'm not necessarily going to review. I could. In fact, I've even been to presentations where someone did their PhD on the return on investment for training in the corporate world. And this guy had calculations like you wouldn't believe. He even calculated the cost for the electricity to the office where the instructional designers were working. He calculated all of that in terms of the cost of training, and then looked at the return on investment using the Kirkpatrick and Phillips levels of evaluation. It was incredible what could be calculated. Now, we don't necessarily concern ourselves with that because that's not what our clients are looking for. They don't necessarily need to have the dollar values calculated. In fact, when we've offered, after I watched that guy's presentation, I thought, hey, we should offer this to our clients. Nobody was interested. Said, we just want you to come and do the assessment, the training, the coaching with our people. That's what we want, not the calculation of the return on investment. So what we do now when we talk about return on investment is, we make these arguments, these business cases, not necessarily based on numbers, because people don't need the numbers. They can see if we can improve the discretionary effort of our people. Again, discretionary effort is correlated with employee engagement. And again, this is a simple way of looking at and understanding employee engagement. If people are engaged, they're going to give a higher level of discretionary effort. If people are disengaged, they're going to give a lower level of discretionary effort. And the discretionary effort of people in any organization is in the palm of the hand of the direct supervisor. And so they need to understand that. They need to be trained to gain this knowledge. And then the skills to know what to do to increase discretionary effort. Back to retention issues again. You may have seen these studies, you may know these calculations, but the average cost to replace an employee is about $1,500 for an hourly employee. What are the costs? Placing an ad in the paper, hiring a recruitment agency, these kinds of things. Having someone write up the job description and determine where on the salary grid it fits, etc. These kinds of things. For technical positions, could be 100 to 150% of an employee's salary. That's huge. If you're talking about someone who's making $100,000 a year, I'm talking about maybe a more senior technical position. Now you're talking about $100,000 just to replace them if you lose them. And this one is amazing, up to 213% of an employee's salary for C-suite positions. Quite incredible when you start thinking about just noticed a comment in the chat box. Maximum discretionary effort also helps the supervisor look good. Absolutely, it does. Yes, if you're accountable for the performance of your department, you will absolutely want to understand more about the discretionary effort of your people. So this idea that it could be up to 213% of an employee's salary for C-suite positions, and I've got a couple of references on the last slide for you. So if you want to know where some of these things came from, we'll have that information available. So incredible. So the idea is then, how do we keep these people is what we really want to know. And again, if direct supervisors are the ones responsible for attention, then we need to make sure that they have the skills, that they're not being abrasive micromanagers who don't give feedback. We can't have that. It's not good for business to do that. Let's look at what some of those costs are all about. As I mentioned, could be the advertising, the interviewing, the screening, the hiring those are all included in recruiting costs. But then once you've hired them, you've got to onboard them. So again, it's about offering them the training until they get up to where they are actually providing a return on their investment, on the investment of their salary to the organization. So the cost of onboarding a new person, training, management time, lost productivity. As you know, when you lose someone, there's a drop in productivity. And it may take a new employee 1 to 2 years in some cases, depending on the job and the industry sector, to reach the productivity of an existing person. So incredible ROI loss there. Um, lost engagement. Other employees who see high turnover tend to disengage. It's like, what's going on around here? Why are they allowing these good people who are my friends to, want to quit and leave the organization? And then, of course, we've got customer service can decrease and errors in customer service. Again, training costs, 10 to 20% of an employee's salary or more in training. And then the cultural impact. Why are we losing good people? Etc. So these are all the costs of losing an employee, retention issues. Okay, here's an interesting question. How much do you think a lack of the ability to communicate and work together as a team costs businesses? Now, this comes from a study where they looked at these issues, and so somehow they had to have quantified some of these things. So a lack of ability to communicate. How did they actually look at that? I haven't seen their actual research methodology, but it is interesting to think, what do they do to collect this data? But here's what they came up with. Businesses lose an average of $11,000 per employee every year due to ineffective communications and collaboration. So just do a quick calculation. How many employees in your organization? Multiply that by 11,000. And if you feel like sharing that in the chat box, please feel free to do that. That would be interesting. We've asked people to do this before, and of course, if you're working for a very large organization, one of the larger employers around, then this can easily go into the millions of dollars lost to ineffective communications and collaboration. And again, we know in psychologically unsafe workplaces, this happens. And thank you, Donovan, just under 10 million. Yeah, it can be huge. And so we have to make sure that employees have the skills. It's one thing to say, improve your communication, but it's another to say, to that end, we are going to provide the training and the development to give you the skills that you're going to need to communicate effectively and collaborate effectively. And what does that even mean? What do we mean by effective collaboration? We have to have ways of identifying things like key performance indicators, KPIs. What are the KPIs on effective communication and collaboration? All right, so what options do we have? Once again, and this can be a little bit like, I've never actually seen one of these Rubik's pyramids, but there's an interesting thought. If you thought the Rubik's Cube was hard, now you can get it as a pyramid. So, okay, so how do we solve this puzzle? Well, one of the suggestions that we have, of course, is taking a look at what are the discrete skills that go into helping managers to be more effective leaders, and we can't overlook this fact that these wonderful brains of ours process emotions as well as logic and reason. So here's one definition. There are many definitions of emotional intelligence out there. Here's one. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand emotions, use emotions, manage your own emotions, to communicate effectively, empathize with others, have better relationships, overcome challenges, and manage stress. Isn't that interesting? Life is kind of about communicating effectively, and if we're going to live together effectively as social creatures, we have to empathize with others. We have to be able to build better relationships, and we have to be able to overcome challenges and manage stress. That's life. And isn't it interesting that some of the most important skills of life we don't teach in school? Why is it that we are not currently teaching kids how to do these things? Because we've kind of over-focused on the application of logic and reason, and such topics as reading, writing, and arithmetic. And it's not to say that those topics aren't important. We need those topics. However, we also could be better at systematically training, teaching about this emotional world that we all live in. So the question becomes, how do we get more intelligent about emotions, given that emotions are critical for our survival? EQ, as you may know, your one's emotional quotient is a measure of the skills that are associated with emotional intelligence. So let's look at what others are saying about emotional intelligence for a moment. So the Korn Ferry Institute is the research institute of the Korn Ferry Hay Group. Korn Ferry acquired the Hay Group, which was already the largest consulting firm in the world. They from their studies, they said reflective bosses with effective self-awareness ran 62% of the most highly effective teams. Conversely, tone-deaf leaders with little self-knowledge ran more than half of the lowest performing teams. Interesting. The ultimate objective of emotional intelligence is authenticity, says Jean-Marc Laouche, president of the Korn Ferry Institute. Authenticity is a driver of trust. Trust is a driver of performance. And you may, when you see trust, you may, like I do, think of the 5 dysfunctions of a team model, this beautiful pyramid model where the base of the pyramid is trust. If you just take a quick look at the first couple of rungs on the 5 dysfunctions of a team, building trust and then embracing conflict as an opportunity versus something to be avoided, then you ask yourself, what are the skills if I'm going to build trust with others? What do I need to know or develop in order to not be afraid of conflict, but to embrace it, to move towards it, to approach, to stand up and take the initiative to to address conflict and handle it well? What are those skills? Here's another comment from from Deborah O'Neill, professor of organizational behavior, director of the Master of Organization Development program at Bowling Green University. She said that emotional intelligence makes everyone more effective, and demonstrating emotional intelligence leads to bottom line success. It's so great that so many people are acknowledging emotional intelligence. As you may also know, the World Economic Forum identified emotional intelligence as a top employment skill for the future. So how do we get more intelligent about emotions? To understand how we can become more intelligent about emotions, we need a model of skills and competencies that we can teach to people, that we can understand, that people need. And this model, many of you recognize, is the model of the leading model for emotional intelligence in the world that is used in the corporate world for employee and organization development. This model makes so much sense. And these are skills that we learn in spite of ourselves through our upbringing. have learned these skills from our parents. We've learned these skills from our families of origin. We've learned these skills from other significant caregivers over the course of our lives. And they include things like how we perceive ourselves. Probably one of the first emotional intelligence skills to be developed is when we are cuddled and nurtured as infants, or left in our crib to cry. We get the sense that we are loved and cared for and valued and worthy and deserving, and a sense that we belong or we don't. And of course, people get a wide range of those messages sent to them as young human beings. We have to understand that these skills that we learn, again, in spite of ourselves, contribute to our effectiveness as human beings. This is not about being, I think some of the problems with the concept of emotional intelligence is the name itself. I call it the blessing and the curse. The blessing is that it's appropriate, given that we don't do anything without emotion, and when we no longer are able of experiencing emotions, a physician will write, "Do not resuscitate" on our chart. That's how important emotions are to us. And we swim in a sea of emotions. They are ever present. And for those of you who are either on the call or watching this recording, for those of you who say, "Yeah, emotions, I'm not much driven by emotions or interested in my own emotions," you're missing out. What are you missing out on? You're missing out on the potential joy that you can experience. You're missing out on how fear can help you to steer away from the things that are not good for you, and of course everything in between. And not to say that those are exclusive ends of the spectrum with respect to emotions. There's much more to it than that. So yeah, feel free to type in your comments or your questions into the chat box at any time. I will be looking there. We've got one. When leaders are deployed to turn a low-performing team around, how much of their success do you think would be attributed to emotional intelligence? A lot. And what you're reminding me of, Aminata, what you're reminding me of is the study that was done at Google that was labeled Project Aristotle, where they looked at 180 teams and they tried to determine what were the top factors involved in creating a high-performance team. They discovered that the highest performing team, the number one factor in high-performing teams was psychological safety. And so if you think about what that is, that's people feeling free, feeling safe, feeling comfortable to speak up, to contribute, to feel like they belong despite their differences from the rest of the team. It speaks to a leader's ability to value diversity, to comfort with admitting mistakes and creating a culture where people feel that they belong, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and that they can share of whatever they feel they need to share. All of that feels safe. So I would say that it's extremely high. But here's the thing, Aminata and others of you, emotional intelligence has been thought of as a thing, and I have trouble with that. I've been talking about emotional intelligence for 25 years in organizations, every type of organization you can imagine, and some that you can't because you didn't even know they existed, in cultures all over the world. And I don't think that we can say attribute something to emotional intelligence. And this EQ IQ binary that was I know where it started, and I know why it started, because we were really only familiar with and we're really only conversant with IQ prior to other ways of being and other ways of thinking came along. Howard Gardner kind kind of opened the door for this in the 80s with his ideas of multiple intelligences. And ultimately, our brains are emotional. I have to mention this quotation from Jill Bolte Taylor, who had this wonderful TED Talk called My Stroke of Insight, about her actual experience of having a stroke as a brain neuroanatomist. She knew exactly what was happening in her brain. Can you imagine? You're having a stroke and you can identify the parts of your brain that are shutting down and the experience that goes along with that. She said before the neuroscience research of the last couple of decades, I found it fascinating to learn that the functional magnetic resonance imaging technology was only invented in 1990. Before that, we had a lot of information about a structure from MRI, from magnetic resonance imaging. But in terms of function, we didn't really learn about that till 1990. And Jill Bolte Taylor said, prior to all that research, we thought that we human beings were thinking creatures who felt. Now we know we're feeling creatures that think. That's how important emotion is to us. So this webinar is a bit like fish learning about water, if you'll pardon the analogy. So we learn all these skills in spite of ourselves. And what we can do with assessment, through assessment, this is the basis for an online assessment tool that many of you know about called the Emotional Quotient Inventory, which is one of the most important assessment tools to organizational development, to organizations, some of the leading organizations in the world, some of whom are our clients. They rely on this as the basis for their leadership development. And so it gives it a great deal of credibility, plus the fact that it is one of the few leading models out there that is based on empirical research. People are surprised to learn that some of the models that they think are leading models weren't actually based on empirical research. They were what people thought was emotional intelligence. So once again, we have to move away from the idea of emotional intelligence as soft and fuzzy. It might be soft and fuzzy, but that's not the whole purpose. Really, it's about effectiveness. When you take the EQI, it is a snapshot in time, but we also learned that all skills were learned and all skills can be improved through directed development. So just some of the ways that happens, just for those of you who might wonder, what are we teaching people, or how are we teaching people? Part of it is about helping them with their self-perception. So understanding more about how people perceive themselves, and of course, when this is positive and healthy, it leads to self-confidence, and understanding that we boost the self-regard of others. So once again, to those managers, how do you boost the self-regard of others? Well, we recognize, acknowledge, appreciate, etc. How to encourage people, invite people, welcome people to express more of themselves. Because culturally, and certainly our society doesn't do a great job of encouraging people to share their emotions with others. But it is the basis for relationships. It's the basis for trust. We don't trust people that we don't know. So if you're hard to read, you're one of those people that aren't very expressive, that people have to guess about, you're going to be harder to trust. So in the interpersonal area, we teach people about what relationships actually are, that you have to relate to someone to have a relationship with them, and relating is emotional expression. Yes, we exchange lots of information over the course of a particular day, but that's transactional. That's not transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is based on relationships. So think teamwork. Alone, we're limited. Together, we can do anything. Decision making is understanding how emotions are involved in our use of logic and reason. Understanding things like procrastination, avoidance, worry, overwhelm, etc. And so we need to know more about that, and we need to teach people more about that, and all of the ways that emotions are involved in our application of logic and reason. Finally, there's stress management, and of course, we don't work and live in non-stressful environments. We work in stressful environments where we need to have tactics and strategies to be able to cope with those pressures. And one of the helpful sayings that has been made more recently famous by Daniel Siegel is "Name it to tame it." Many of you know that he didn't create it or come up with it, but he made it famous more recently. This has long been known that if we can name an emotion and become more literate with our emotions, more emotionally literate, as Daniel Goleman wrote in his 1995 book, then we can better understand what information that's providing us, and we can better know how to be directed, allow ourselves to have that emotion assist in our navigation of our environment. Okay, so here are those 5 quick EQ tools. The self-regard boost, anybody can do that to help the self-regard of others. So for those of you who are leaders, and certainly what we teach leaders is that they need to recognize and acknowledge people more. Express yourself. Share your worries, share your concerns, share your fears, share your joy, share your passion. Don't make people guess. And think teamwork. And use your empathy to understand more about whether people are engaged or not engaged, whether they're using their discretionary effort or not using their discretionary effort. And then finally, with respect to stress, the BC Ambulance Service has a slogan, which is "Share it, don't wear it." And again, we need to talk about what's going on for us. If we don't, it can lead to, at best, mental health issues, at worst, suicide. Okay, so here are some references. I'm happy to share this presentation with you. Email me, and I will share this presentation with you. You'll have some of these references. But consider offering the EQI, which is the self-report measure for emotional intelligence. Consider the 360, the multi-rater version, to your managers. Consider offering EQ coaching to your managers. Consider bringing an EQ workshop like this one in-house, and we can do those virtually or in person. Come to us, get the expertise, and bring it back to your organization. So get certified with us to use these tools and use these ideas back with your people. And if you like this content, you enjoyed this webinar, please feel free to join us each month for our free monthly webinars. You can always register at eitc.ca. If you're already registered, you will get a reminder for upcoming webinars in future months, and we will see you then. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for participating today. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm just going to look back, and some people had to leave. They're going to be listening to the recording. Absolutely. You are so welcome. So welcome. Thank you. Now, here's a typical question. How do I help my manager, my leader, to understand, and my decision maker, how do I help them to understand that this is something that we should consider investing in? And again, take this PowerPoint presentation, run them through it, show it to them, and think about how it applies to your industry. How would having your people better able to develop effective working relationships with each other, communicate more clearly and directly, address conflict immediately when it comes up, and not avoid those conversations, being able to have those difficult conversations. Think what that would do for the metrics that you care most about, whether it's employee engagement, whether it's some bottom line metric, even shareholder value. We can make the argument that by developing the skills of your people, you can address all these issues. So thank you so much for being here. We hope to see you again on upcoming webinars. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. Take care. Bye-bye.